welcome everybody. Today's presentation is titled Macrocosm, Microcosm, Medicine. And the title I've taken is inspired by a book by Jocelyn Godwin about the life and works of Robert Fludd. So I've talked about Robert Fludd before. He's this alchemist and physician from the early 1600s. And this book contains hundreds of drawings that he did, specifically relating to alchemy and science and spirituality and many other things. So I pinched the subtitle from this book because this idea of the macrocosm, the universe at large, the microcosm, the small universe, and then medicine. They're like three topics in which my view has changed over the years. So what I thought was the macrocosm after my education, my indoctrination, is very different to what I now think the macrocosm is. And similarly, the microcosm, what I thought that was, and what I think of it now is completely different. And with medicine, so what I used to think medicine was and what I think medicine is now has also changed. So I wanted to address each of these and go through how things have changed over the years. So in the modern conception of the macrocosm, we think of the universe at large. So we've got the stars, we've got outer space, the sun, the moon, the planets, gravity being the force that holds all of the universe together, globes, okay, so not just the Earth globe, but the moon is a globe, the sun is a globe, Mars is a globe, Saturn, everything we're told is a globe floating in space. Space-time, the fabric of space-time from Einstein's theory of relativity, again being like a sort of fabric that connects the universe together at large. The Big Bang and dark matter, and things of this nature. So macro, large, cosm, cosmos. This is what I came out of my education thinking the macrocosm was. Now, the microcosm, well, atoms, molecules, nuclei, particles, quantum physics, really microscopic and sub-microscopic structures. That's what I believed the microcosm was. So it's the world of the very small. Now, microscopic is one thing because you can watch what's happening under a microscope, but sub-microscopic is another thing entirely because you're going beyond the range of our senses and beyond the range of our technology to see. So you're kind of going into an imaginary world when you go into the sub-microscopic, and that's why it's all studied with the mathematics and so on. Now, medicine, again, after my indoctrination, I thought it was all germs, viruses, vaccines, surgeries, pill for every ill, radiation, genetics, big pharma, and so on. Well, my view on that has changed in recent years as well, as I'm sure yours has too. So what is the ancient conception then? What do these terms mean to someone like Robert Fludd 400 years ago? Well, the macrocosm is, of course, the planets and stars, yes, but it's also the elements, the four elements, fire, earth, air, and water, and the heavens, or heaven itself, the actual dwelling place of God. And this is part of the macrocosm. And there's three parts to it, what they call the sublunar, which would be the world of elements where we are just now with the fire, earth, air, and the water. And then the celestial, which is the planets and stars. And then the empyrean, which is the dwelling place of God. So this was the threefold structure of the macrocosm, and I'll show that more as we go. The microcosm actually has nothing to do with microscopic structures, atoms, molecules, the very small things. It actually has nothing to do with that. The microcosm is man, humankind. We are said to be the macrocosm in miniature, consisting of a body, soul, and spirit. We have a macrocosm and a microcosm. Man is the microcosm, nothing to do with microscopic structures or atoms and molecules and so on. Well, medicine according to Robert Fludd, is the sacred art of restoring harmony within a human microcosm. Okay, so a totally different conception, but the idea of harmony as well. So the cosmos, we also call it the universe. Universe meaning one song, having a musical connotation. So Robert Fludd very much viewed the universe as a musical system and the human being as a musical system. And so medicine would be the art of restoring harmony to a human being, a microcosm, when it's in a state of disharmony. Now, what about the structure of the macrocosm? Now, this image on the left, this is what I believed for 38 years of my life. Okay, so I don't judge anyone who still believes this, because if you haven't looked into it, you haven't looked into it. It's as simple as that. I didn't look into it. I believed it. I thought we were on that little planet Earth there, and that we're spinning and going around the sun, and that maybe one day I'll be able to take a rocket and fly to one of those other big spheres out there in the solar system. And admittedly, I did study astrophysics at uni because I thought it would maybe one day get me on a rocket and into space to go and visit other worlds and so on. I bought into this hook, line, and sinker, and of course studied all the physics of how it's all supposed to work, the orbital mechanics and all this kind of thing, astronomy, all of that stuff. Now, what we have here is a world which is flying, spinning, spherical, heliocentric, so centered around the sun, and exposed to infinity. So you see the little Earth there, it's just exposed and open to the whole infinity of the cosmos. And this is quite extreme to actually think about. If the universe is infinite and it's this vacuum, and all possibilities in the world are just out there, and we're completely exposed to it. No protection, just open sky all the way to the infinity of the cosmos. In this view, the stars are said to be moving in all directions at high speed, and that the stars themselves are distant. They're said to be extremely distant, extremely large, and solid objects. And in this conception, there's no God and no heaven. Now, in the biblical flat earth view, we have this idea of an enclosed, so it's stationary, circular, so it's circular disc like a coin or a pizza, geocentric, so it's not centered around the sun moves around the earth. It's enclosed, and in fact it's sealed. Like nothing can get in or out. Light can get in or out, but no water or air or earth or creatures can get in or out of the system. It's sealed and it's finite. Okay, so instead of stretching off to the infinity of the cosmos, it's actually finite, has a size. Now, this description here is from the Bible, but a lot of people are arriving at this conclusion through scientific means. They're not believing it because the Bible said it. They're believing it because of scientific questioning, testing, and observation is leading them to find themselves in agreement with the model put forth in the Bible. So as I say, I used to believe what was on the left, but through my own investigation and questioning, and with the help of the flat earth community, who have posted, thousands and thousands of videos looking at every aspect of this debate, I do now think we are living in something much more like the biblical conception here. Okay, and within this conception, of course, God and heaven exist, and they're up there above the firmament. Now, I'm not entirely sold one way or another on whether the firmament is a solid barrier, like made from glass or quartz or something like that, or whether it's like an energetic field. I don't know whether it's just energy or ether, or whether it's actually a solid quartz glass barrier. I don't know, either way. But The stars in this conception are fixed. They have fixed angles of latitude, so that their distance from the pole star is fixed, and they go around in circles. They're equidistant, which means all the stars are the same distance. There's not, one star this distance, another star that distance, etc. All the stars are the same distance. They're on the edge of this dome-shaped structure, along with the sun and the moon. And they're local, so they're not millions of light years away. Now, in the planet Earth model, they do tell us that the planet is surrounded by a toroidal field, a magnetic field, which protects the planet from the sun. Now, in this artistic rendering here, you can sort of get a sense of what an extreme belief system that is, that basically our little planet has somehow gotten itself right up close to this like giant ball of nuclear fire that could just consume it and destroy it in an instant. But somehow the planet has created this magnetic field which protects us and all life from getting vaporized and destroyed by the sun. And that's what we're told. And then we have this kind of thing where we're told that inside the earth is all this lava. So we're literally, it's like, the sun isn't killing us and the lava underground isn't killing us. We're just existing on this very small crust of water and land. And below us and above us is just like certain death. And we're all being protected by this toroidal magnetic field. So it is really quite an extreme belief system, but this is the conditioning. This is what I was taught in physics, and I believed it completely for many years. Now, the toroidal field, you will have seen this kind of thing before, right? So this is the essential dynamic behind all life, okay? So it's going up and coming out, and then down and coming in, and spiraling as it goes. So it's like a unity of polar opposites, like up and out, down and in, up and out, down and in, and going round and round in a cycle. And you can see how that form it's like a tree. A tree naturally takes that form, comes up and spreads out. Or plants, or you can see like a human being lifting their hands up in celebration or something like this, right? Or even like the Greek and Roman columns that you see in a lot of buildings, you see they open up at the top of the column. They're revealing this essential dynamic structure which is underlying all life. Now, forgive the cheesy graphics here, but in the flat earth conception, it's also surrounded by a toroidal field dynamic. So in both the globe earth conception and in the flat earth conception, the common factor of the toroidal field is still there. But in the flat conception, the earth is in the center of the toroidal field as a flat disk. It's called the accretion disk or the plane of inertia. So it's the middle area of the torus field where matter forms and sits stationary. The rest of the field is moving. We see the sun and the moon, the stars, they're always moving. They're going round in this toroidal dynamic, but the earth and the water are sat there in the plane in the middle of it. So the toroidal field dynamic is common to both these world views, and that is really the heart of the mystery, is this toroidal field, how it comes about and how we find it in everything. So in terms of how the earth looks, I'm a big fan of Gleason's map. I actually have one on my wall here, and I'd recommend everyone has one. It's a very good map, and it helps to make a lot of sense of the world, being able to see all the countries like right there in front of you, and all the coordinates are correct. I've done many measurements and checks with this, comparing Google Earth and Gleason's map and the distances and everything, and the coordinates are all correct in this map. You can use that map to navigate the world. But one of the things I think is interesting about it, and I learned this from Steve Faulkner in his recent documentary series, Scamtarctica. If you look on Gleason's map, on the left side of the map, you'll see that it's actually very thin. The ice, the Antarctic ice wall, which is the ring of white around the outside, you see it's very thin on the left side of the map. So just near New Zealand, it goes in, there's like an inlet where it almost, where the ocean almost goes to the very edge of the map. Now, if you look over the other side, you see it's actually pretty thick. The white ice is pretty thick all the way around, except for that one point where it goes in, and then another point down there near South America. You see it also goes in a bit there. Now, what's interesting about this is those areas are actually beyond 80 degrees of latitude. And down in this bottom right corner here, it tells you that there's no sunlight beyond 80 degrees of southern latitude. Just frozen darkness. So if you can imagine that, this is an area where the sun is going round above the earth, but it doesn't reach 80 degrees. Anything beyond 80 degrees, there's no sunlight at all. It's just ice and dark. Well, interestingly, those thin parts are beyond 80 degrees and there's no bases there. All right, there's bases all over Antarctica, all around that rim. But at those bits where it goes beyond 80 degrees, no bases at all. So that does kind of lend support to the idea that there is no light beyond 80 degrees southern latitude. So this is just another version of what they call the AE map or the AE projection. And if you're trying to understand flight paths, for example, why you fly via Greenland when you go from the UK to America, why do you fly via Greenland? It doesn't make sense on a globe. It doesn't make sense on a rectangular map. But if you look at it on this map, it makes perfect sense. Greenland is right between Britain and North America. So you can start to see how the flight paths make a lot more sense on the flat map than they do on any of the other maps we get presented with. So the AE map, or the azimuthal equidistant map, there it is. It's a bit more clear there. Obviously, some features would be that the Arctic Northland is excluded. Like if we go back to this one, the Erd Globus AE projection, you'll see there is actually land at the North Pole. Greenland connects to the North Pole land, but on Gleason's, the North Pole land has been deleted. There's nothing there but ocean. So in these modern ones, again, nothing but ocean there. They've taken away the center land. And Antarctica is still showing as a perimeter on this one. But now if we look at the UN logo, this is the same map, but it's segmented into 33 zones. So there's that 33 Masonic number again. 33 different zones on the map. Antarctica is excluded now. So they've taken Antarctica away and replaced it with the olive wreaths, which, as I understand, are symbolic of aristocracy or elites. And so this map, a lot of people dismiss it like it doesn't matter, but this is a very important, very good map, and it's well worth studying. And they have it on the UN logo. This is an image from the UN assembly just a few weeks ago when Trump was talking there. And I mean, look at the size of that thing. It's absolutely massive. Map up there in gold. And there's 193 nations are part of this, using that map as their logo. So this map is no joke. It's like, it literally is, it's a proper map, and I think it's the best map that we have of the realm for understanding where we are. Now, this is looking at the map, and you can start to see that there's different zones corresponding to the different humors in alchemy. So we have cold and dry zones, which are like right in the center there, the Arctic, the light blue, cold and dry, right? There's no growth there. It's barren, basically. And then you have cold and wet zones. So like North America, Northern Europe, like the dark blue. So you get seasonal growth in the cold and wet zones. You'll have growth in the summer and the spring, and then death in the winter and the autumn, and it will go this death and rebirth cycle. And then in the yellow bands, you have hot and dry, which is like stifled growth, and you can see that like there's lots of desert, and the areas where there is some green, it's kind of a very light green color. And then In other areas, you have hot and wet, which is constant growth. And you can see there those jungle areas, and they do just literally grow constantly. Now, if you imagine the toroidal field, that it has these like layers within it, nested inside of it, like harmonics. And different temperaments are in these different zones, and it's very well defined, these different like rings of different temperaments. And they correspond with the humors in alchemy. So cold and dry, melancholic; cold and wet, phlegmatic; hot and dry, choleric; hot and wet, sanguine. And then we could imagine as well, so that's the geometry of the torus field from above, looking down on it. And you can imagine that's going around, keeping the whole thing dynamic and alive. So we've also got the winds. So the winds also go in rings around the earth. You've got the easterlies, which are the winds coming towards the east, and they're called the polar winds and the trade winds. So that would be the white arrows there. They go from the east to the west. And then you have the westerlies, which are with the red arrows, and they're coming from the east to the west. From the west to the east. So the trade winds go clockwise, and they're with the rising sun. So when the wind is coming from the east, it's coming from the same direction as the rising sun, and therefore the wind is warm in the morning and cool in the evening. But then the westerlies go anti-clockwise, so they come from the direction of the setting sun. So they're cold in the morning and warm in the evening, which is what it's like here. It's chilly in the morning, but then you get warmer evenings. And these bands of winds overlap with the different temperaments as well. So you have, westerly winds that are sanguine, as well as westerly winds that are choleric or whatever. There's a mix because the wind bands overlap with the humors. So yeah, all of this just makes perfect sense to me, that we live on a circular disc inside of a torus field, and this is what keeps everything alive and changing. Now, I also like the idea that it's hermetically sealed. So hermetically sealed, as I mentioned before, means that the air, the water, and the earth cannot get in or out. And there's this famous case of this guy, David Latimer, who created this terrarium, planted some plants in a big bowl, sealed it in 1970, and he only opened it one more time. I think it was 12 years later, he opened it and put in a little bit more water, and then he sealed it up again. And it's still thriving to this day, right? So it's only light that can get in or out. I suspect this is true with us as well. Of course, I can't prove it, but I just think that this creation that we're in would have been built in such a way as to be protected from outside influence. It's what makes sense to me. So again, this kind of thing, heaven of the heavens, divine dwelling, and then we've got the celestial, which is the stars and the moon and stuff in the dome, and then the earth. And of course, there's world under the earth as well. So you see this kind of thing in some of these old alchemical artworks. This one here called the Compass of the Sages. You see up the top there, there's like a dome-like structure. You've got the symbol for Aries, Taurus, and Gemini there. And then we see the sun on one side and the moon on another. And in between, there's 5 little stars there of different colors. Okay, so that's Venus in green, Mars in red, Jupiter in purple, Saturn in gray, and Mercury in orange. And so the light of the sun and the moon and those 5 luminaries all combines and comes down to manifest the world below. And you can see there it says Pater and Mater, which is father and mother. And if you remember from the Emerald Tablet, it said its father is the sun, its mother is the moon. Right, this is what we're seeing here. But these words are the root of words like pattern. So pater is pattern and mater is matter. And so there's a masculine feminine energy here where the sun is sort of the patterning principle and the moon is the matter principle, which receives the information from the sun and expresses it in, by changing its form. So the sun and the moon are at the top of these two pillars, J and B, that's Jachin and Boaz, and you see like the symbols for the elements are on there as well. So the left pillar, J, has the symbol for air on the bottom there and the symbol for fire at the top. Those are the masculine elements, which correspond with the sun. That's why the sun's on that pillar. And then on the other pillar, B, you have the symbol for water and the symbol for earth, which are the feminine elements, and then that's why the moon is there on top. And then down there in that structure, you have, well, it says at the top there, Superius, superior world, and then down in the grass there, it's upside down, it says Inferius, or the inferior world, the world of the elements. And then those pillars that are on there in the circle, those are the metals. All right, so the gold, silver, lead, tin, mercury, iron, etc. Those metals are the earthly manifestations of the light of the planets. And then this one here, emblem of the golden chemical philosophy. I'm not sure what year it's from, but again, I just want to draw your attention to the threefold structure of the macrocosm here. So at the very top there, it has the name of God in Hebrew, and you can see the lamb there, like the Lamb of God, and there's a white dove. So that would be the Empyrean heaven at the very top there. Then the celestial realm, we see here we've got this big dial with all the animals of the Zodiac around it there. And there's a lot of stuff, a lot of information in there about salt, sulfur, and mercury, philosophical mercury. Yeah, a lot of stuff. This is some stuff I can't quite read, but a bunch of details in there inside the wheel of the Zodiac. But then round the outside, you see there's like 7 figures. Okay, so you've got from left to right, you've got Saturn there, and he's often depicted as holding a scythe and eating a baby. This is from the mythological story of Kronos and Saturn, of like eating his children so that they couldn't take his power. The symbol of Saturn there as well. So then you've got Jupiter in purple there, Mars in red, Venus in green, Mercury in orange, and then the moon there in silver, and then the sun. So then as we come down from the celestial into the elemental world, we see there's a big tree there. It says Arbor Vitae, which is the tree of life. And there's all these little yellow, they look like coins, but I guess they're like fruits of the tree of life, and they have different alchemical symbols on them. So those are substances. Essentially, they're the substances of earth, which are here being depicted as like the fruits of the tree of life. You have on the left side, you can see a bird above some flames with 2 balls under its wings. That's a phoenix, and that's a ball of fire and a ball of air under its wing there. So the phoenix is being depicted here as the guardian of the elements, fire and air. This is that sort of thing of like under your wing, like taking something under your wing is like, taking guardianship of something. Then over the other side, you have an eagle, and underneath its wings, it has the element of earth and the element of water. So it's saying that eagle is like the guardian of the earth and the water elements. So down at the bottom then, so you can see these rays coming out from the heavens. You have, well, you can see that there's like a naked man and a naked woman with the head of the sun and the head of the moon, and they seem to be walking off to go and, get up to something. We can only imagine what they might be getting up to, but yeah, I'd say definitely some kind of alchemical marriage happening in there. If you look down in the bottom right, you'll see Mercury. He's there in an orange garb holding caduceus. And if you look at that beam of light that goes up to the celestial, it connects the two. So you see Mercury, the light shines down, and then Mercury's like stood there at the end of that light beam. Similarly, if you look at Mars and Venus, in between them there's a little light beam. It comes down to the ground, and then you see Mars and Venus stood there in red dress and green dress, and they're together, they're slaying a dragon. So, so again, this is like Mars and Venus, like lovers, god of war, goddess of beauty and fertility. You know, they're together and they're both slaying a dragon. So this is the dragons representing like the lower animal nature. So anyway, there's lots of other things in this, but again, this is just another example of how the cosmos was portrayed in these emblematic artworks. So there's also the idea of the universe as a flask, the alchemical flask. So on the left here, you have a depiction of this kind of flask or oven type thing. So it's got, you see A, B, C, and D, like 4 compartments. So the D is really, that's where the fire is. That's like the real, you know, the real hot fire, the stuff that really burns. And then this compartment C, so that will be the lowest compartment that feels the real heat of that fire. So it's going to be very, very hot in there. And then compartment B, that's a lower heat. It's a different type of fire, more gentle. And then compartment A, more gentle heat again. And so this is actually a model of the cosmos, a model of the macrocosm. And you see it over here on the right side. So you have these 3 parts to it. So down at the bottom, you see it says malum Satan, right? That's the fire that burns, right? The real hot, burny, you know, destructive fire, like right down there at the bottom of the cosmos. But then the fire up the top is the light of illumination, right? It's not, it doesn't burn you, it illuminates things, right? It's like the light of life. And then in the middle there, in the triangle, you've got your air, water, earth, fire, your world of elements. Homo, it means man. So that's your kind of elemental world. So what about the microcosm then? Well, as I said, the microcosm is man and woman, humankind. Manly P. Hall said, man is a mortal God and God is an immortal man. And of course, Hermes Trismegistus said, as above, so below, as within, so without. Again, this suggests that, you know, what's going on here is a reflection or a mirror or a representation of what's going on above. So humanity is a representation of God. Robert Fludd said, man is a miniature universe, and the universe is structured like a great man. So the fundamentals of the microcosm, well, you have the 12 signs, the 12 zodiac signs, which are not just constellations in the sky, but they're actually systems of the body. So if you look at this art piece from Robert Fludd, you look where the human figure is. Note that the genitals are right in the middle, in the center, like I talked about last week. And around the outside of the, see it says macrocosmos at the top. So the outer ring is the macrocosm. And then inside the dark inner ring is the microcosm. It says microcosmos behind him there. And you have the symbols for the zodiac going around the outside of him there. And then notice there's like thin straight lines drawn between each zodiac symbol and different parts of the body. Okay, that's showing you that each sign of the zodiac corresponds to a different system in the human body. So then you've got the 7 luminaries, which you can see up the top there. You got the sun and the moon and the 5 planets. Now those correspond with organs of the body, with the chakras, with the metals, and also with angels. There are also powers within us. Like in the last image, like Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, they're represented as people. And the reason they're represented as people because they are actually powers within us. You know, like Mars the warrior. We all have a warrior inside of us. Mercury, the intellect. It's like we all have an intellect inside of us, right? These are powers that we have. Then you've got the 4 humors, which are the representation of the 4 elements in the microcosm. So you can see that in the center circle there. Melancholic, sanguine, choleric, and phlegmatic. Then the 3 primes, the tria prima, which is the body, soul, and spirit, which is a reflection of the threefold structure of the macrocosmos. Then you've got your two genders, of course, there's male and female, and then just one creator, one source, right? The universal mind from where it all came. So every aspect of the macrocosm finds its counterpart in the microcosm. So the planets are like human faculties. The zodiac is anatomical systems. Celestial harmonies are like the rhythms of the body. The divine light of God is our consciousness, our awareness, our divine spark. And the elements correspond with the humors in the body. So these are a couple of diagrams from the Robert Fludd book. And the one on the left here is showing harmonic relationships. So he's basically showing the human body as a system of octaves. These are like harmonics and octaves. But if you look at the one on the right, you can see there's basically 3 musical octaves. You can see the notes there. So the lowest note, where it says terra, down at the bottom of that black ball, that's actually a capital gamma, the Greek letter gamma. Well, it's supposed to be a gamma, which is the lowest note G. And then it goes A, B, C, D, E, F. And so you see the lowest note is terra, which is earth. That's like the first note. And then you have aqua salsa, which is salt water, right, which is A. And then aqua dulce, which is like sweet water or fresh water. And then there's like 3 different kinds of air, and then fire. And then it goes into the next octave, and you've got Luna, Mercurius, Venus, Sol, Mars, Jupiter, Saturnus, right? So that's like the soul, the celestial. And then it goes into the next octave, and you have these things like voluntas, which is like willpower, ratio, which is like our rational mind, intellect, mens, which is like the mind, it's like the power of the mind, spiritus sanctum, the Holy Spirit, verbum, the word, and deus pater, which is like the spirit of the Father. So these are like spiritual qualities, and he's representing them as different notes in an octave. And then you see the light above the head there. So he says that the Spirit of God is actually above our head. And here's a couple more. The one on the left here, De Musica Mundana, it's got the 4 elements. You see earth at the bottom there, terra as the black ball, and then you've got ignis, fire, at the top. Now, fire and earth are furthest from each other because they're considered like the most extreme opposites. So there's no fire in the earth, and there's no earth in the fire. Whereas air and water kind of mix and blend like different properties, but fire and earth are like the most extreme like opposites. And again, it's showing these as octaves and musical intervals, like separating these. And on the right here, this is called the divine monochord. So it shows, again, going from the bottom of this, you see this is like string, it's a bit of wood with a single string, and then at the top is like a tuning knob. And that's like God's hand coming out and controlling the tuning knob. And so there's 2 octaves here. Okay, so you've got gamma down the bottom for earth, terra. That's the open string. And then the first note A is aqua, second note B, air, ignis. And then you've got moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. And then it goes up into the Empyrean, and there's like 3 different levels to the heaven as well. So again, musical conception of the cosmos from 400 years ago. This is Robert Fludd's idea. So we also know that this toroidal field is found around the human being. I talk about it, it's around planet Earth, it's around the flat Earth, it's around every plant and tree, and but it's also the human being. But what you can see just from this graphic that I threw together is that, yes, you've got this like flow of energy going through us, keeping us alive, but it has a certain frequency, right? The frequency, the rate at which the energy is going through us. So that tuning knob that it shows there, that's what that is, right? So just like with a guitar, when you tighten the tuning, the frequency of the string increases. And so he's showing here that basically God has the power to increase or decrease the frequency with which everything in the macrocosm vibrates. Okay, so God controls the tightness of the string, and then everything else is all the celestial harmonies will change depending on how tight that string is. Now, I'll just get on to medicine. So I came to this understanding of really two types of medicine. The alchemical approach to medicine is toxicological. So this is the idea that the body must be purified. It's like the body is thought of as kind of a garden in a way. You would heal by elimination or transmutation of unprocessed materials. So things that you can't digest, things that you're holding on to that you can't digest, and that could be physical or emotional or spiritual. But that's kind of what we mean by toxins. It's like stuff that you've taken on that you can't get rid of, you can't process. So you heal by eliminating it or transmuting it. So disease in this view would be caused by imbalance, disharmony, or accumulated toxins. And the patient is viewed as a microcosm, a holistic being, right? A representation of the universe in miniature. But then in the modern conception with medicine, we have this immunological or allopathic medicine, which is the idea that the disease must be killed. In this view, the body is actually a battlefield because disease is viewed as being caused by these microbiological invaders, germs or viruses. And in this view, the healing is done with synthetic drugs, invasive surgery, and radiation. And the patient is viewed as a carrier, right? A carrier of the enemy of disease. So it's just a completely different way of thinking about the human being, completely different way of thinking about disease. And I personally let the germ theory thing go in 2020. I was satisfied that there's no evidence of viruses existing or evidence of them causing disease or transmissible disease. And so I'm out of that world now. I do not believe in that kind of medicine at all. But what I learned is looking at alchemy, there's actually different approaches to medicine within alchemy as well. And these can be exemplified by looking at Paracelsus and Robert Fludd. So Paracelsus, 1493 to 1541, and Robert Fludd, 1574 to 1637. So both of these men were alchemists and both were physicians. And they had a different approach to medicine. So Paracelsus worked from the earth upwards. In other words, he would take base materials, often toxic substances, and he would transmute them into healing medicines using laboratory alchemy techniques. But Robert Fludd, he worked from the heavens downward. So he would channel celestial energies and cosmic vibrations into the microcosm to restore harmony. And he was, of course, very controversial among the establishment of the medical establishment at the time. So the Paracelsian approach viewed the human being as body, soul, and spirit, and really considered wellness as being when all of that is in harmony together, the body, soul, and the spirit in harmony together. And then illness is when disharmony, so when it's all fallen out of balance or there's blockages or toxins and so on. There's this idea of the doctrine of signatures. So for every disease, nature provides a cure. And the cures actually have signatures which reveal their purpose. So they look a certain way, like carrots being good for your eyes, for example, and a carrot looks like an eye when you slice it, right? The things in nature, they have certain signatures which allow you to, determine that that is the cure for the certain thing. And you have this law of similars, like cures like, and healing is done by consumption of specific substances of a specific dosage. Right? That's kind of the way it goes. And then there's this idea that the dose makes the poison. So all things are poison, and nothing is without poison. Only the dose makes a thing not a poison. So what harms us can also heal us when it's properly prepared and administered. So this was really a principle of Paracelsian medicine. And, some people think it's quite controversial, but I think I agree with this. I mean, it takes something like LSD, for example. The dosage of LSD, like a recreational dosage of LSD, is micrograms, right? Like micrograms. We're talking the tiniest amount of this liquid, and it has a very, very dramatic effect. So poisons can be reduced to such a dosage where they're no longer poisonous. I believe that is the case. But that was obviously fundamental to his approach. Now, in Robert Fludd's approach, it was purification by light. He believed that the divine light of the sun is the primary healing agent, and that you should harness celestial light for healing rather than administer drugs. So he was more about the circulation of the vital spirit within the blood, said that corresponded with cosmic influences, and that the healing would come by aligning the microcosm, the body, with the macrocosm. So it's a case of coming into alignment with God, if you like. So he would use prayer and incantation, invocations, incantations, the use of music and sound, celestial alignments, and most importantly and controversially, he would use the name of Jesus Christ, the sacred name of Jesus Christ, to heal people. Now, I know not everyone's a Christian or likes to hear about Jesus, but the fact is, if you just go and look into it, there's actually countless examples of people healing with the name of Jesus Christ. Not only in the Bible, but historically, going way back, modern times. I mean, just look it up. It's literally countless, the amount of reports of people healing with the name of Jesus Christ. So it is actually well established that works, but maybe not everyone can do it. But Robert Fludd certainly seemed to be very capable and very confident in healing people with the name of Jesus Christ and other divine sacred names. So you can understand that was frowned upon and not very popular among the scientific medical establishment. So just comparing then the two approaches, right? So the Paracelsian approach, the primary focus is matter and substance. It's transmuting matter and substance into medicine. The view of disease is that it's caused by toxins and impurities and imbalance. The method of healing is with minerals, salts, and metallic remedies. So he would use metals. He would make medicines from metals as well. The source is Mother Nature. Preparation is laboratory alchemy. And the view of the physician is like a kind of alchemical artisan, right? It's like this alchemist who can concoct specific cures for specific diseases. And his legacy is really the foundation of herbalism and pharmaceutical medicine, all right? Because they both, whether it's herbal medicine or pharmaceutical, they both have the same idea that you have to sort of take a certain dosage of material in order to heal. Herbalism obviously sources it from nature. Pharmaceutical sources it from crude oil. Now, in Fludd's approach, well, the primary focus is the spirit and light. View of disease is a kind of spiritual corruption or disharmony in the system. His method of healing was through invocation, prayer, music, and divine names. The source of healing is Father Sky, right, instead of Mother Earth. This is obviously spiritual alchemy rather than laboratory alchemy, and the view of the physician is like this kind of divine intermediary, like a channeler. And this would be the foundation of spiritual, faith healing, and energy medicine. So we see these two streams of medicine come out from looking at Paracelsus and Robert Fludd. So We could say we've got healing arts that work with physical substances, chemicals, and material interventions, right? So pharmaceutical medications, herbal medicine when it's taken in material dosage form, nutritional supplements, surgery, vaccines, antibiotics, chemo, radiation, and so on and so forth. And then in Fludd's view, well, we have healing arts that work with vital forces, spiritual alignment, and energetic patterns. So we got like homeopathy, chiropractic, spiritual healing, sound healing, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, Reiki, color therapy, crystal healing, meditation. So what do you notice here? Well, I notice that all of these ones are perfectly okay by, modern standards. You can get all that stuff. It's pushed at us all the time. Take this, take that, pill for every ill, or a cure for every disease in nature. These things are pushed on us and considered acceptable ways to approach medicine, whereas all these are constantly attacked and smeared as being woo-woo, pseudoscience, snake oil, all this kind of stuff, right? So this was 400 years ago, more than 400 years ago, but still we have this view that material medicine and material healing is the real way to do it. Using energy or spiritual or celestial influences is just woo-woo nonsense. So anyway, and it's interesting as well how probably most people will have heard the name Paracelsus, but hardly anyone's heard of Robert Fludd. He's been completely erased from history. Okay, so almost finished. Talking about shamanism then, I wrote about it in my book, and I had a lot of profound experiences with shamanic medicine. Now, shamanic medicine is a combination of both these different styles of medicine. You've got the earth-based and celestial medicine together. So they'll make an alchemical plant preparation using the earth, using alchemy like Paracelsus to make the medicine, and then they will administer the medicine, and then while the medicine is acting, you will be in ceremony, there will be music, there will be prayers and invocations and so on. So that's really taken both, it's like both and energy medicine and earth-based plant medicine. And then with homeopathy, it's another good example because it uses purified substances, purified plant essences, and it uses the law of similars, like cures like. But it heals by way of energetic stimulation of the vital spirit rather than by material action on the body. So homeopathy is like you're like signaling the body to begin healing, right? You're not actually forcing it, or you're not feeding it a material substance or forcing it mechanically in some way to initiate a healing response. It's just the essence, if you like, the celestial code or the celestial essence of the plant is encoded, and that goes in the body and sort of sends it a signal. So it's like a combination of both the Paracelsian and the Fluddian approach. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there for now. We can get on with some questions. I hope you enjoyed that.